Lo, 'tis a gala night, within the lonesome latter years. An angel thrall, bewinged, bedight, in veils and drowned in tears, sit in a theatre to see a play of hopes and fears, while the orchestra breathes fitfully the music of the spheres. Minds in the form of God on high mutter and mumble low, and hither and thither fly, mere puppets they who come and go, in bidding of vast formless things that shift the scenery to and fro, flapping from out their condor wings, invisible woe. That motley drama, oh be sure, it shall not be forgot, with its phantom chased forevermore, by a crowd that sees it not, through a circle that ever returneth in to the self-same spot, and much of madness, and more of sin, and horror, the soul of the plot.
Oh, well, my name is Travis Rhett Wilson. I'm a Southern California-based actor, primarily theater. I've been performing in stage plays and musical theater since I was about 10, maybe. I fell in love with the works of Poe from a young age. From a very young age, I knew I wanted to portray him someday. And it's been a great joy to experience that dream as an adult. This here is my beautiful fiancée, Jessica, who also directed me in this one-man piece, The Dream Within a Dream, The Spectre of Edgar Allen Poe, and also edited the script. Oh, what makes me tick? I was hoping you could tell me. No, it's well, I love all things macabre. I love all things creepy and dark and sinister in literature. I have a great joy for literature and performing.
My name is Jessica Delgado. I'm engaged to this guy right here, Travis Rhett Wilson. I'm 25. I directed and edited this piece. My relationship with Poe was I was walking through bookcases at a very young age and reading all kinds of weird, unusual sci-fi and macabre mysteries, and murder is a good topic when you're 13 years old, so I kind of just fell into that relationship with Poe, but misunderstanding and seeing the world through an unusual lens. So, what makes me tick? Oh, when people make it clear that they don't read literature, that kind of pisses me off.
Well, I've always enjoyed, the game of pretend. I've always felt like I'm kind of a kid. I've never really felt grown up. I just enjoy interacting and taking on the personage of someone else. And it started when I was very young, probably 4 years old. My father and I, we used to play theater games in which we'd act out plays that we pretty much improvised from beginning to end, and we performed them for my mother and friends of the family, various visitors to the house and so forth. And we did that for a few years, and then when I entered school, I took part in a couple of plays. The first was a stage play version of the children's short story, The Three Billy Goats Gruff. As most people might remember, the villain in that story is a troll that lives under a bridge. Well, in this particular version of the story, the troll had a pet frog. I played the troll's pet frog. So that was a lot of fun. That was my first experience with live theater. And then a few years later, I think it was 6th grade, I got to play the title character in the Grim Tale Rumpelstiltskin, and I just sort of, the bug bit me at that point, and I've never looked back.
My father was a professional musician, so I got to see the world of what backstage is, and I got to see the rehearsals and the gigs and people coming together and putting something together. So that kind of started me working backstage, and then I kind of figured, I acted in high school and I did like a couple plays here and there. My main one was Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat in high school, and then I didn't really act for quite some time, and then I really started getting involved with backstage work, and then I just figured, well, I can probably try and transition from backstage to onstage, and I got cast in Real Women Have Curves recently this year, so I got to play one of the 5 leading roles, and that's all that's there. And so that was an incredible experience, and so that's kind of where my acting comes in, and I do both. I both backstage and onstage. So.
It's an amazing play, by the way.
Oh, so much fun. We had actually the playwright. She came one night and did a Q&A with all of us and with the audience. It was pretty cool.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible. It's really nerve-wracking to present their baby in front of them, but it's so cool. Like, it's amazing.
May I add that this soldier here at one particular performance had a piercing earache in both her ears. Severe, just debilitating, agonizing. She couldn't drive. I drove her to the theater. She went on and was just magnificent. You'd never know. She was just phenomenal. Well, when I was young, I can actually remember it distinctly. When I first read, the first story I read by him, pretty much on my own, was The Telltale Heart. I'm getting ahead of myself, though. The first thing I ever heard was, of course, The Raven. My first thought was, these words, what are these words? What does this mean? What does that mean? Why does he talk like that? And I thought to myself, nobody talks like this. And then I started reading the short stories. I thought, why doesn't anybody talk like this? I want to talk like this. I wanted to know those words.
Out the lights, out all, and over each quivering form, the curtain, a funeral palm, comes down with the rush of a storm. While the angels, all pallid and wan, uprising, unveiling, affirm that the play is the tragedy man, and its hero, the conqueror worm.
And I had no idea the kind of tragedy, the kind of agony this guy faced through his life. And, the vices and the struggles and the adversity and dealing with scrutiny from no one that would take his work seriously. How it just destroyed him.
So, how I got interested in this project, I guess it starts with when we met. We actually met through the Riverside Dickens Festival, right down the street, because he was portraying Poe. We met there in La-di-da, all the lovey-dovey romantic stuff. But then we started getting serious about combining that element of the mystery that people are so used to, but also unveiling the humanity behind this person. And making it relatable to audiences, and audiences that are of all ages and different ages, because everyone that we've run across seems fascinated by this person.
Well, I have one person to thank for this, above and beyond all, is my dear friend John Lynn, who just randomly saw me one day in a play. It was actually Dracula, of all things, oddly enough. It was the Stephen Dietz edition, and I was playing Renfield. And it opens with Renfield dressed in a tux, sitting at a table, explaining the legend of author Bram Stoker, who created Renfield, of course. And my friend John saw me in this show and decided, that's interesting. And we had talked briefly beforehand about how he had wanted to write, a series of, one-person plays about, famous figures in literature, political figures and historical figures, etc. And he said he always wanted to start with Poe. And then he saw that show, and that made his mind up for him. He decided, that's exactly what I'm talking about right there.
Oh, outcast of all outcasts, most abandoned. To the earth art thou not forever dead. To its flowers, to its honors, to its golden aspirations. In a cloud, dense, dismal, and limitless. Does it not float eternally between thy hopes and heaven? Of course, I shall not pretend to consider it any matter for wonder at the extraordinary life and mysterious death of Edgar Allen Poe.
And we toured with it, and then we both kind of got busy with other projects. And then, my friend John, we both were very active in the community, very active in our careers, so we just sort of went our separate ways. We're still very good friends. But, and I sort of thought, well, why can't I just sort of do my own sort of take on this? And a lot of the material that Poe wrote, of course, just seemed to speak naturally to me. And I had been doing it already in the other show, Telltale Heart, Raven, Annabelle Lee. I just felt it would speak best to people if it were more or less taken from words that he actually wrote down in journals, letters, various correspondence, and I started reading these things, and I realized that he's telling his life story right here, that this is so simple. We don't even need to overthink this.
I'm a student of poetry, and so I dissect poetry, literally I dissect poetry, and I look at specific words and their meanings at the time, and what that double entendre could possibly mean if it's autobiographical. So, like, for example, with, like, The Raven, I dissect that thing and see why are certain words put in there. I mean, he had to have worked on this for a while, and no words are in there on accident. And what fascinates me is, why does The Raven say nevermore a certain number of times? And that leads to different theories of what that could possibly mean, and there are different theorists. There are different poetic theorists that I'm really fascinated with, that reflect the fiction with the factual. So going there of, like, from a more literary perspective, I guess, and more of, like, being trained with dissecting poetry and, like, really looking into it and scrutinizing it, and kind of getting obsessed, I guess, with certain elements of the poem. We kind of sit down and actually have conversations about certain words and phrases of, like, why is this important? Why did he say this versus there are so many other ways he could have said it, but he said it this particular way. And so having those discussions then allows us to kind of decide how we want to show that on stage and how to portray that on stage.
He started out as a very happy man. He was just so jovial and so playful in his youth. And I wish, just for his sake, that he could have stayed that way. Unfortunately, he faced tragedy. He faced, death and all sorts of vices that caused him all this pain. Perhaps mental illness that he could have inherited. I think by and large what we're familiar with today is probably accurate, that could have been what led to his downfall, at least emotionally. However, for obvious reasons, it is difficult to really capture what we can be convinced is a verbatim portrayal, because he's slightly dead.
Through our endeavors to effect this, a garbled or exaggerated account made its way to society and became the source of many unpleasant misrepresentations, and very naturally, a great deal of disbelief.
I always fear that someday Poe's going to come to me in a dream and just grab me by the ears and go, "You got it wrong! Stop! Stop! Stop!" This is one of my biggest fears. I think that's probably something that perhaps haunts a lot of actors that have to portray people that really existed, and especially when it's someone that created all these beautiful works of fiction and poetry and so forth.
I think he went through journeys of insecurity. When he lost someone, he was completely lost, and it's not like the processes of medical treatment were completely different. They were almost non-existent back then. They had different ways of treating these diseases and illnesses, but the things that the women especially that he loved the most, it was a brutal death. It was not the good death, the beautiful death. They didn't die with their hair down, surrounded by loved ones necessarily. They went through a very physically challenging death. So having to see that and witness that trauma influenced him, definitely, and influenced his writing and who he was as a person and his outlook on life. I guess over time, if different people that you really love and care about just die, and there's no closure, there's nothing, you just keep writing and writing, and then it happens again, and you hope that they might get better, but then they don't, and it's just this constant battle of terror and hope and being torn apart by that. And so as a person, I think, like you were saying in the beginning, he was really happy. He was a very playful person. He was really mischievous, and that kind of this is reflected in some of his earlier writings. But later on, when things seriously get dark, and just when he thinks things might get better, they get worse and worse and worse. And his letters and the later poetry and later writings is a reflection of his misery. So I think he was a great person. He did have his faults with alcoholism and a lot of other issues, but that was kind of a result of outer environments and a lot of things that were out of his control. So he was just trying to gain control through his writing because he knew that his outer life was just...
There's no doubt that Poe was arrogant. He had an ego. And it could be violent, off-putting at times. And it's simple to just dismiss people that are like that. I've met numerous people like that, and I want to know their backstory. I want to know how they got that way. And it was a defense mechanism. There's no doubt in my mind. And there's one instance, by all accounts of the people that associate with him, he did not like criticism. He would not respond well to it. It's appropriate, ironic that he turned into one of the harshest critics in America. He was vicious, he was ruthless. But there's a little known anecdote of when he was attending the University of Virginia. He had written a poem that no one knows because it's gone. And there was a title character called Gaffy. He was just reading it to his schoolmates in a on-campus pub. Of course, it's beautiful. As far as he's concerned, it's a masterpiece. Well, there are people that heard it. Well, most of them praised him. They loved it. One guy, and we can never know if he was being serious or if he was teasing him or prodding him, perhaps. I like to think he was trying to push his buttons, because at that point people probably already could tell how. They probably already knew how to get on his nerves. It's funny. Once you know a guy's tics, it's fun to push them. It's happened to me. I've done it to people. You can ask this one right here. So the guy gave a very modest criticism of the work. He said, perhaps the title name, the name of the title character, Gaffy, appears too often. He did not respond well to that. He threw every page of the thing in the fire, stomped up the stairs, slammed his door behind him. And there was a time when I read that and I thought to myself, yes, that's me. That's me. He was known for being arrogant, and I like to think that for the most part, it was more of a defense mechanism than anything else. I feel like in most people, ego is a defense mechanism, because usually when someone points out a flaw, we know it's right. We know, okay, I do that, but a lot of people don't admit it, and they'd rather deflect and project. Okay, no, this is you, which is why I just adore the irony that he had such a hard time accepting criticism, and yet he became one of the harshest critics in America. When he worked for magazines, he became known as the Tomahawk Man. He was just so mean. Even to people who had praised his work, he would thank them by giving them harsh criticisms. And some of his, we've actually incorporated one of his reviews into our show in a recent performance, and it got some laughs, which makes me very happy, because the show needs laughs.
I guess it's kind of the same as his. Jane Austen actually did the same thing. Someone offered criticism of a letter that she was reading to her sister, and who eventually became her lover, which is interesting. And she just took all of her writings and threw them in the fire. And she would cut letters and words out of letters, or she would cut words and letters that she was sending to her loved ones. So I guess being a harsh critic, it's a defense mechanism of someone else's work. That's one part of it, because I kind of do that in my line of work, is I have to look at someone's writing and tell them how better to possibly fix it, and sometimes people don't like that. I guess I kind of also do that because I'm also a poet and a writer, so I kind of have to think critically about my work and consider whether or not this is right for a particular anthology that I want to submit to or publish. And ultimately, you have to go to bed not only with yourself but also with the writings that you produce, and you have to be really protective of your work and defend your work. I do that, but I don't really want to be that narcissistic, but you kind of do. When you work so hard on something, you have to really protect it and take care of it.
It's actually been beyond belief. The Whaley House in particular, it was extraordinary. We performed it at one of the most haunted locations in America is just astounding. I could not have asked for a better unveiling experience.
So when we were down in San Diego, we were actually invited to go to the Whaley House, but also to allow him to perform at different schools. So we went from elementary school to middle school, right?
It was La Jolla Elementary,
Uh-huh.
and then we got to go to Warlands Middle School later that day.
Yeah.
And I've always loved performing these horrific tales of murder for kids, because the reactions are just so, they're fun. The kids are so fun to perform for, especially the younger ones. And they particularly asked me to do Telltale Heart.
Mm-hmm.
And when they first asked me to do it for these elementary school kids, at first I was shocked. Wow, really? They want me to talk to these kids about this horrible murder of this unsuspecting old man?
True. Nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous I had been there. But why would you say that I am mad? The disease had sharpened. Not dulled my senses, not destroyed them. Above all was the sense of hearing, acute. I heard all things in heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken and observe how carefully, how calmly I can tell you the whole story.
When you're performing in front of kids, for me at least, and I think this is common among character actors in particular, once you just sort of start to feel a hint of them really starting to enjoy it, you just sort of naturally want to embellish and ham it up more, and they love that. And I put in all these little quirks and ticks and things that I don't normally do for adults that are watching it, and they just eat that up. Like, I do this twitchy thing with my eye, and they laugh. I love to hear them laugh, because it's a mixture of, look how goofy he is, and then there's also an element, it's so creepy and scary. It's sort of an uncomfortable laugh, and you have this beautiful plethora and hodgepodge of different reactions. It's like a garden. It's extraordinary. I enjoy it so much.
And we actually got in the mail a whole bunch of drawings that the kids did, letters that the kids wrote thanking him for coming.
They're so beautiful.
They're so cute. We have a stack of all these beautiful drawings, and the way that these kids write and how excited they are about it, and to see it performed it's so beautiful to see.
And they're smart kids.
They are.
There's some smart kids too. Yeah, the one kid wrote, he drew an image of something he thought of from Telltale Heart, and it's the narrator with the lantern looking in at the old guy in the bed, and there's a speech bubble that says, "I will murder him." And I've never laughed so hard.
Cracked up.
If that kid ever needs to be adopted, that's ours. He's our kid. It was so cute, and it was so funny, and we've kept all of them, and I do intend to write those students back very soon.
So much fun.
Yeah.
Oh dear.
I've never had anything like this happen in my life. This was a number of years ago. This was right here in Riverside.
Do I know this?
I don't know. We didn't know each
I'm
other then.
discovering things.
This was the first instance I experienced of when they booked me at Halloween as Poe through Riverside Dickens Festival. I was at the Canyon Crest Winery, just a few blocks hence. I'm just talking like Poe. Just a few blocks hence from here. At length, I was walking down the street. He always uses at length.
That one, yeah.
At least 5 times in all his stories. Nobody says at length. which is why it's cool. I like it. So, and on that note, I was performing The Telltale Heart for an older crowd, and they were into it. They were digging it. And it was a full house, a room about this size at Canyon Crest Winery. And I had reached about the second or third paragraph before the end of the story. And it was just about where it gets intense. The heartbeat is driving him nuts. You know, he thinks, fooled the officers. And then he starts to hear the heartbeat. And he's going slowly insane. Suddenly, just before I start that paragraph, an older gentleman sitting in one of these plastic chairs in front of me, his chair slips out from under him, and he goes flat down on his back on the floor of the winery. It's like, bang! In an instant, all the heads in that audience, everybody in the room, like sprinkler heads, went, they just shot, they snapped in the direction of this person, and the gasp, there was like this synchronized gasp. Yoink! They all looked instantly. Now, first, of course, that scared the hell out of me. Now, in and of itself, that's awful. That's horrifying, right? But what made it, and I couldn't help but find it hilarious later, what made it funny is the moment they looked at that person, another person in a table right next to them also had their chair slip out from under them, and they went down on their back on the floor, and the exact same reaction happened. Just this unison gasp, and the heads snapped to look at this person. Now, fortunately, nobody was hurt. It was just like we're all struck for like a good 3-4 seconds. We don't know what to do. And of course, you know, the organizers of the event rushed to these people, helped them up. They were fine, thank goodness. They weren't hurt. So that's when I realized, okay, they're fine. They're not hurt. I think Poe can make a comment about this. Find levity in this situation. The first person that had been helped was sitting in their chair. I leaned toward them and stopped the story. Oh, I should blame the murder on you. And that got the laugh I wanted. Then the organizer of the event, Richard Reed, went ahead and directed me, "Shall we, Mr. Poe?" Meaning, okay, go ahead and finish the story. And then I went ahead and I did the last 2 paragraphs, and that was it.
Wow.
There's been nothing like that, ever. Nothing like that in history. It's like something out of Super Mario Brothers.
It's gonna be super cheesy, super corny, gross, romantic stuff. But the day that I saw him perform as Poe, and he gave you a lecture, this is gonna be really gross. But you looked at me like you knew me, and I didn't know who he was. Like, who is this weirdo? And then secretly, I was like, that's gonna be my future husband. He's mine. Yeah, I was obsessed with you from the start. And this lady, she's sitting diagonally. So I'm sitting here, and the lady's sitting like there, not here. And she turns around and she looks at me like, "Nice work." And I'm like, "I don't know him." And she's all dressed up in her gown, and me being the instigator I am, wearing an Edgar Allen Poe shirt.
How dare you?
I know. I think I might have been wearing this one. And so it was weird. It was really weird. And then you finished your lecture, and I thought that was the end of it. But I was going to my car and getting a sweater because it was getting cold. And this lady approaches me, and I'm like, "Oh, what the heck's going to happen now?" And she's like, "You tell your Poe he did a really good job." And she was saying it in a way where it's like, "Tell your boyfriend or husband or whatever the heck he is, he's great." And I'm like, before I could say anything, I was like, And she just walked away. She was like, I'm leaving. I was like, I don't know what the heck to do.
It's a good thing she escaped. She might have jinxed it.
It scared me. I was like, what is... It was like this ghost that came out of nowhere. She was like, by the way, it might have been. Oh my god. Spooky. But that's the most memorable because then I added you on Facebook and my excuse was, I just want to see his upcoming performances. But really, I wanted to snatch you up and here we are. So that's more memorable for me because without that I probably would have had the courage to like talk to you.
She added me.
I was so nervous.
I granted it. I looked at her pictures and she had a shirt on and one of them that said, all that we see or seem has been a dream within a dream. And I knew, okay, I have to talk to this girl. I sent her a private message and we had coffee the next day.
It was a good time.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Oh yes, as a matter of fact, we are looking at a December 10th performance of my one-man Christmas Carol play that I have performed in the past at the Sturgis Center in San Bernardino a number of years ago, and the Whaley House, having been so pleased with the response of the Edgar Allan Poe play, expressed interest in me coming to them as Charles Dickens to perform a one-man Christmas Carol. I'm very excited for that. Jessica here is going to give me direction for that. And we will be using Dickens' own reading script that he used in his lifetime upon his tours, which makes me very happy.
Yeah.
This is his own words.
Yeah.
Go see shows.
Support live theater.
Yeah.
Do not let live theater pass away or become extinct. Us in general, we have, well, of course, we both have Facebook pages. I have an active Facebook page, Travis Rhett Wilson. If you're interested in emailing me, travisrhettwilson@yahoo.com, which is so hard to remember because it's the same as my real name. And I have a YouTube channel as well. Just search Travis Rhett Wilson, and as does my loved one here.
I also compiled, we're going to be putting our entertainment company together. We're in the process of doing that right now. So we do have a sign-up list under vultureeyeentertainment at gmail.com. You can email that for more business info, but I would say just go see local shows. Support local artists, go to art galleries, go to live theater, go see performances, and have a good time.
It is now rendered necessary that I give the facts. So far as I comprehend myself, they are succinctly these. The air was damp. The morning was soggy, cold. There was much fall that day. That's Thursday, 19 January, 1809. The dimly lit utilitarian aura of the 62 Carver Street boarding house served as a grim affidavit to the unfortunate calamity which was about to unfold. The room was drafty, woefully lit. Quiet, despite the agonies thus endured by the passenger of the ship, as well as her captain. Oh, horror upon horror. We are spinning within the grasp of the whirlpool, in immense concentric circles, round and round the walls of the gigantic amphitheater, the summit of whose walls is lost in the darkness. But little time will be left me to ponder my destiny. For we are spinning round and round within the mad grasp of the whirlpool. The ship is plunging madly, oh God, and going down. And thus the blissful ignorance ended, and the nightmares of the world came flooding in. I was born